Have you ever stopped to think about what the Bible really says about tattoos? This is a topic that divides opinions, raises questions and, in some cases, even causes fear. Over time, the relationship between faith and tattoos has always been up for debate. Some believe that tattoos are expressions prohibited by the Bible, others see in them a legitimate way of expressing their identity and faith. But is there really a clear and definitive answer in the Bible about this? To unravel this issue, we will dive deep into the origins of tattoos, explore what biblical passages say, and even understand what religious people from different denominations think about the subject. By the end of this video, you will have new, perhaps unexpected, insight into what the Bible teaches us. And the most interesting thing, the answer may be much more complex and intriguing than it seems at first glance. And to begin, we need to travel back long before the Bible was written. Did you know that tattoos are an ancient form of expression? They have existed for more than 5,000 years and appear in different cultures spread across the world. From the ancient Egyptians to the indigenous people of America, tattoos were, and still are, symbols that carry deep meanings. For some people, they mark the transition to adulthood. For others, they are rituals of protection, honor and respect for ancestors. But how did this ancient practice end up becoming a topic of such fierce debate in the Christian religion? Over the centuries, tattoos have been seen by many religious leaders as symbols of rebellion, pagan practices, or even witchcraft. However, does the Bible really prohibit tattoos? This is a question that many believers ask and who know how to answer with confidence. The truth is, to understand this issue, we need to look closely at a specific verse. Many of the controversies surrounding tattoos in the Christian religion focus on a specific passage in the Bible, Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 28. This is an old passage that may, in effect, be intriguing for many people trying to understand what the biblical view is about modifying the body with tattoos. The verse says, "Do not make coats on your bodies for the dead, nor tattoo on yourselves. I am the Lord." But what does this commandment really mean? Is it an absolute prohibition applicable to all Christians, or are there more nuances to consider? Let's explore this verse in its historical context to try to find an answer. The book of Leviticus was written thousands of years ago, and its text served as a guide to laws and practices for the Hebrew people, who at the time were going through moments of great cultural challenges. They were surrounded by different peoples who practiced strong and often questionable rituals in the eyes of the Hebrew people, such as human sacrifices and death cults. These people had the habit of marking their own bodies as part of rituals to honor the dead or even to invoke gods. Thus, many scholars argue that the specific prohibition applied to pagan ritual practices, which included coats and marks on the body. The idea behind this verse, therefore, would be to prevent the people of Israel from following these pagan practices, protecting them from influences from other peoples and, at the same time, keeping them separate and devoted to a single God. However, what does this context have to do with tattoos today? Could tattoos, which often represent tribute to family members, art or even faith, be seen in the same way as pagan rituals from the times of Leviticus? Could it be that, over the centuries, this interpretation has been used repeatedly? Block 3. Interpretations and mutations over the centuries. Over the centuries, this passage from Leviticus continued to be debated, interpreted, and in some cases even rewritten. Many interpretations began to emerge among religious leaders and scholars. However, one thing is certain: cultures around the world have continued to embrace tattoos as a form of expression. And it isn't just pagans. The Christian Church itself, especially in its first centuries, had its own examples of marks on the body, which, interestingly, were tolerated. For example, many persecuted Christians in the Roman Empire discreetly marked symbols of faith on their bodies. The fish, which was a symbol of Christ, and other small signals were tattooed as a way of identifying each other without being discovered. These marks were more than just tattoos. They were signals of faith, resistance and loyalty to a God in whom they believed. But what about the current church? Should all Christians follow the commandment to the letter? Interpretations of the scriptures vary greatly between Catholics, evangelicals and other Christian denominations, and some religious leaders have very different opinions on the subject. This leads us to the question, is the Leviticus verse God's final word on the subject or just guidance for a specific situation at that time? When talking about Christianity, it is impossible to ignore the impacts of the New Testament. While the Old Testament establishes Jewish laws and customs, many believe that the coming of Jesus brought a new perspective, a renewal of the covenant between God and humanity. And, interestingly, the New Testament does not directly mention Titus. But what does this mean? Some scholars suggest that if Titus were a fundamental spiritual issue, Jesus or their apostles would have addressed the issue directly. Instead, they focused on other aspects of faith, such as love for others, forgiveness, and purity of heart. This makes some Christians question, does the ban on Titus really remain valid, or is it a cultural custom that has been interpreted as a religious rule? It is interesting to note that in the New Testament, the body is mentioned several times as the temple of the Holy Spirit. This concept of temple has led many to interpret that we must take good care of our bodies, avoiding excesses and keeping them clean. However, so far, there is no direct mention that condoms or prohibits any type of marking on the body, such as tattoos. In practice, this has led some Christians to view tattoos in a more personal and subjective way. If done with a positive and meaningful intention, as a way of remembering faith or honoring a loved one, it could even be considered an extension of one's own self. Spirituality. This view, however, is not unanimous, and there are many nuances and debates even among the most respected religious leaders. During the first centuries after Jesus' death, Christians lived under the constant threat of persecution. Therefore, many of them made marks on their bodies as a way of identifying their faith and commitment to Christ, even in the face of Roman persecution. The first Christian communities saw themselves as a differentiated group, which needed to protect and recognize each other. Under these conditions, discrete brands emerged and, at the same time, laden with religious symbolism. These marks were, in many cases, tattoos. They had a secret meaning and represented a person's bond with their faith and their community. This proves that tattoos, in certain contexts, were accepted and even encouraged by Christians. Interestingly, these practices were recognized by the Church for a few centuries. In other words, the view on tattoos was much more flexible than we often imagine. But with the passage of time and the officialization of Christianity in the Roman Empire, this practice became less common, and the Church ended up taking a more critical stance in relation to everything associated with rituals or body marks. This included tattoos, which, although accepted in certain contexts, began to be seen as practices from ancient times and, over time, associated with pagan customs. When we talk about Christianity, we are not dealing with a single view of faith. In effect, Christianity is made up of several denominations, each with their own interpretations of Scripture and their own doctrines. This diversity of beliefs is one of the factors that makes the issue of tattoos even more interesting and complex. The Catholic Church, for example, has historically maintained a neutral position regarding tattoos. There is no official church teaching that condoms or prohibits tattoos. Although many Catholics interpret the Leviticus verse as guidance against marking the body. For the Catholic Church, the important thing is the intention and symbolism behind the tattoo. A tattoo that promotes something positive, such as faith, family or spirituality, can be seen as a form of personal expression and even as a testimony of faith. On the other hand, many evangelical denominations, especially the more conservative ones, interpret the scriptures more rigidly and often cite Leviticus as a prohibition against tattoos. Some evangelical leaders believe that the body is sacred and therefore should not be marked or modified in any way. But even among evangelicals, there are varied opinions. There are pastors and theologians who view tatus as something culturally neutral, as long as they do not have a negative meaning or contrary to faith. In addition to Catholics and evangelicals, other aspects of Christianity, such as the Orthodox and Anglicans, tend to adopt a more flexible stance regarding tatus. They focus less on Old Testament laws and more on New Testament teachings about love, acceptance, and compassion. For them, what matters is the heart and intention of the believer, and not necessarily what is marked on the skin. And what do religious leaders themselves say about this matter? Talking to pastors, priests, and other spiritual leaders can offer interesting insights into how this is used in the day-to-day lives of religious communities. While some leaders maintain a traditional stance under white tatus, others take a more personal and understanding approach. Many pastors advocate they're grateful to think deeply before getting a tattoo. They encourage questioning the motivation behind the act. Is it something that truly has positive, lasting meaning? Or is it an impulsive decision that could be a reason for regret in the future? The answer to these questions may vary, but the central point is respect for the body and the meaning that the tattoo will have for the belief. Some Catholic priests and religious, even if they do not directly encourage tattoos, accept that each person has the right to express their faith and personality in a unique way. They believe that if the tattoo is an expression of love, respect or spirituality, there is no reason to condemn it. In some cases, priests even bless religious tattoos as an act of faith by the belief. These leaders emphasize the importance of each Christian seeking God's guidance before making such a permanent decision. Imagine a person who decides to get a tattoo to symbolize something deep in their faith. Maybe it's a cross, a favorite verse, or a phrase that reflects your love and respect for God. This type of tattoo has a special symbolism. Rather than just being a mark on the body, it is a constant reminder of your faith, a way to reinforce your spiritual commitment, and a way to witness your belief to anyone who sees it. For many people, religious tattoos serve as visual reminders of something greater and transcendent. And in a world where we are constantly bombarded by worries and distractions, this type of brand can serve as a point of support, a spiritual anchor that helps people connect with their faith on a daily basis. But is this accepted by everyone? Even among the faithful, there are those who consider that it is not the tattoo itself that matters, but the intention behind it. Some religious people see this as proof that the value of a tattoo depends on its meaning and purpose. In other words, a tattoo with a spiritual purpose can, in effect, be an expression of love and respect for God, while a tattoo done impulsively, without reflection, may not have the same value. One of the most interesting aspects is that today, the new generation of Christians seems to be changing the way they view tattoos. Among young people, tattoos are seen more openly as an art and a legitimate form of expression. This acceptance movement has been gaining strength and spreading among younger believers, who often have a less conservative view of what it means to have a tattoo. On social media, many young Christians share their stories and explain how their tattoos represent their spiritual journey. For them, a tattoo can be a reminder of an important moment with God, a spiritual achievement, or even a personal overcoming. And in practice, these tattoos can become a way to connect with other people, especially those who share similar beliefs and values. This new generation, which grew up in a more diverse and connected world, does not feel the same pressure to follow rigid traditions, and many seek a faith that is more adapted to their time and way of life. Rather than considering tattoos taboo, these younger Christians see them as an opportunity to express their faith in a unique, visual and accessible way. The relationship between tattoos and faith becomes even more interesting when we look at the individual stories of people who mark their bodies as a way of getting closer to God or their own spirituality. For many, tattooing is more than an aesthetic choice. It is a visual testimony of your journey, something that represents moments of overcoming, of reunion with faith, or even of conversion. An example that draws attention is that of young people who, after periods of separation from religion, decided to get tattoos as a symbol of spiritual renewal. The tattoo, for Terum, serves as a way to remind Terum every day of their decision to return to faith. Some choose biblical phrases, while others opt for religious symbols. Every detail is designed to reinforce a connection that is often difficult to explain in words. These testimonies bring a human and emotional aspect that can be difficult to ignore. For these people, a tattoo is a part of their identity, something that carries a deep meaning and, in many cases, reinforces their commitment to God. And for those looking from the outside, it may be surprising to see how these marks on the body, so debated and questioned, can symbolize something so intimate and spiritual. However, it is not always easy to reconcile the desire to express oneself with tattoos and faith. Many people, especially those raised in more conservative environments, voice an internal dilemma when considering getting a tattoo. The point is that, for many, tattoos represent a form of personal expression and freedom. But at the same time, there is the fear of disobeying God or going against the values in which they were created. This internal battle is common and reveals how deep the topic of tattoos is. For some, it is almost like a test of faith, or a test to understand whether it is possible to remain faithful to religious teachings while finding ways to express their personality. And for others, the decision to get a tattoo only comes after much reflection, prayer and searching for a personal answer. This dilemma reveals a more intimate side of faith. They need to find a balance between what one feels and what one believes. After all, does God judge the exterior, the marks on the skin, or what is in each person's heart? This is a question that many ask themselves before making the decision to get a tattoo. After all, what does the Bible really teach us about tattoos? As we have seen, the answer is not simple. The Bible provides words of wisdom and guidance, but it is up to each of us to reflect on the meaning and intention behind our actions. Over the centuries, interpretations have changed, and today many believers see tattoos as expressions of their faith, while others prefer to follow more restrictive traditions. Ultimately, what really matters is the sincerity of your heart and the respect you have for your faith and your body. If you like this content and learn something new, leave a like. This helps us to continue bringing you relevant and interesting topics. And how about sharing with your friends? After all, this is a topic that can spark several discussions and reflections among people of different beliefs. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any of the next videos. We still have many exciting topics to explore together, and you will certainly be surprised by what comes next. Thanks for following us this far, and see you in the next video.